Hi there, I'm Kieran Chandler, and today we're lucky enough to be taking a peek behind the scenes at Bitcoin ABC. We're going to be talking to some of the people behind the technology and getting their views on the latest developments in the industry. Welcome to Behind Bitcoin Cash. I'm here with Amaury and Shammah. Gents, thanks very much for joining us today. To kick things off, perhaps for our viewers, perhaps you could introduce a little bit about yourselves. Just tell us who you are and where you sort of come from.
Yeah, so I'm Amaury Séchet. I'm the lead developer of Bitcoin ABC. And Bitcoin ABC is the first node software that was powering Bitcoin Cash. And that still is the majority node software, but not the only one anymore.
Okay. And yourself?
My name is Shammah Chancellor. I'm one of the maintainers for Bitcoin ABC. I've been a software engineer for about 18 years, and I've been interested in economics and currency distribution for a long time, and I think Bitcoin is an excellent alternative to fiat currency.
Okay, nice. So how about Bitcoin ABC? Perhaps you could sort of tell us a little bit about that. Sort of how did you get involved in Bitcoin ABC?
Well, I got involved because I created it, so that's pretty much how it happened, right? Bitcoin was going in not a very good direction, not a direction I was very pleased with, and so we needed some alternative to it, and yeah, I was, there was some issue with Bitcoin ABC was not the first alternative node software that tried to change things a bit, but there was some issue with how it was done in the past that led that to not quite succeeding, and yeah, creating our own software was a way to have more leeway to do whatever we wanted, and it ended up working. So that was a good choice, I guess.
Good moment when that happened. So how did you get involved? Where did you come in?
So I've been following cryptocurrency since about 2011, kind of from a distance. And I had some concept errors about how Bitcoin worked, and about June of 2017, I was talking to my friend Amaury, who I've known for about 5 years, and I was wondering why he was working on Bitcoin, and I got some of my concept errors cleared up. And then in August of 2017, I had heard that Bitcoin Cash had forked, and I started talking to him, and I wanted to get involved. So.
Nice. So obviously Bitcoin is a very exciting place to be. It's obviously an exciting field. The media is painting it as a really glamorous picture. But I'm sure in your sort of day-to-day lives, it's probably not quite so glamorous. I mean, what are the sort of the biggest challenges you sort of face on a daily basis?
Like, generally, it's more difficult to move things forward in a Bitcoin-related project than in other projects, because you need to get a lot of people on board. All those people, they want different stuff. And so you need to, find something that's gonna make everybody like sufficiently happy, or at least not so unhappy that they're gonna leave. Like it's always there is a lot of trying to get everybody on the table and try to have everybody agree on something to make it happen, which is not that much the case on other software projects.
So you talk about
the fact that technical people, they tend to be argumentative to begin with, and you throw money on top of that, and you get like an explosive mix.
Nice, must be entertaining. So who are these key stakeholders? Who are these people that you're sort of communicating with on a daily basis?
Well, so there are other implementation, and then there are people working on wallet software or various like payment processors, exchanges. I mean, there's just like miner as well, obviously. There's just like a lot of different parties that form an ecosystem, and those different parties, they are interested in whatever business they are doing. So the aspect of Bitcoin that interests them is going to be slightly different.
Nice. And Shammah, sort of, if we're talking about that Bitcoin ABC ecosystem, Bitcoin ABC is a part of that. Sort of, how do you fit in? How's your working relationship with the rest of the bigger picture?
So right now I work on kind of what are, like, when you send a transaction in Bitcoin, you have to pay a fee. That's one of the primary things I've been working on right now, and then also communicating ideas from other developers and participating in different proposals. Probably the biggest challenge there is like Amaury said, is how do you communicate ideas in such a way as that it's intelligible for everyone within the community and that they understand why changes are being made.
Okay, and speaking of changes, one of the big changes that's recently been announced is this miners initiative, which is all about sort of lowering the dust limit. Perhaps for our viewers, perhaps you could sort of explain that in sort of real sort of basic layman's terms. What do we actually mean by this miners initiative? What is it?
Okay, so there's a number of rules that are consensus related that everyone has to agree upon. The dust limit and fees are not one of those things. Those are configurable by the miners. So it's great that that CoinGeek has taken this initiative to kind of get everyone to lower those fees. But there are some technical limitations around that I'm currently working on solving in order to make it possible.
Mm-hmm. And Amaury, have you got anything to sort of add? Do you think it's a good initiative? Is it something that's going to work?
Yes and no. I have like mixed feeling about it. So I agree 100% with the goal. This is where we need to go. But if it's done in a naive way, it can expose the network to some risks. So this is what Shay is working like. You want to do that in some specific way that's not going to open the network to vulnerabilities.
And what do you mean by naive way? Perhaps you could sort of expand on how
So
can be done
if
naively.
you just change the various configuration of the node software to just like reduce the fee dramatically and reduce the dust limit dramatically, then you expose. You create an option for someone to have a behavior that is very costly for the network, and do so almost for free. So it's gonna create problems. So we need to change the fee structure in such a way that regular, normal, everyday usage pattern become cheaper, but patterns that are unusual and that for the most part are going to be used by people that want to be hostile to the network need to remain expensive enough so that those attacks keeps being expensive.
Okay.
And so this is a solvable problem, but this needs to be thought through, and there's some work to be done there.
And what sort of time frame are you sort of envisioning? How long do you sort of reckon you'll have to sort of solve this problem?
Well, actually, Shay maybe can talk more about this because he's been working on it, but there have been good progress made on that.
So I'm pretty much done with the patches to do some of the things that are required for that.
Yeah.
I expect them to be done before November, but they obviously need to be tested on testnet and make sure that there aren't any side effects to those changes.
Okay.
Bitcoin being a permissionless system and being open, it's kind of always subject to people trying to attack it. So it's important to thoroughly test changes before their launch on mainnet.
Yeah, definitely. And there was also just a recent attack that came into the news sort of yesterday, right? Did you hear about that in South Korea? An attack on Bitcoin?
It's I think I'm not sure, I don't know if we're referring to the same stuff, but there is one of the big exchange on North Korea that have been hacked.
Yeah.
But it's not per se an attack on Bitcoin, it's an attack on the exchange.
Okay.
Which is like one of the reasons people quite often recommend like don't keep all your money on exchange. You send your money on exchange when you want to trade it, but then get your money out of the exchange and keep it secure on your own. Maybe use a hardware wallet or something like that. And for that very reason, right? Because if the exchange get hacked, then you can have your money stolen. Essentially, when you put money on an exchange, you trust that the exchange is gonna do the right thing. And many exchanges do the right thing, but not always. And once in a while, there is, every few months or so, there is one exchange that get hacked and lose a ton of money.
Yeah. So tip number one is keep it on some sort of hardware and take it off of the exchange.
Yeah, hardware wallet is probably the best option.
Okay, nice. So there's a lot of buzzwords floating around Bitcoins at the minute, and I think that's maybe for sort of the common man, that's probably one of the things that makes it very difficult to get sort of involved in it. A real buzzword that's come out recently is UTXO commitments. Perhaps one of you could sort of tell us a bit more about that. What do we mean by UTXO commitments?
So Tomas, one of the other Bitcoin Cash developers, has been leading that up, and basically a UTXO commitment is a way to cryptographically commit to kind of all of the accounts in Bitcoin. And
who owns what money?
Yeah. And so if that commitment is in each block, it would allow node software to enter the network very quickly. Right now, full node software that exchanges and miners run require like 6 hours to sync up with the network because they have to download all the previous data. And that'll only increase in time as Bitcoin continues to be used. So UTXO commitment allows you to short circuit that process and just download the current state of the entire Bitcoin system. This is an excellent initiative. I'm really happy with what Tomas is doing.
Okay, nice. And is it the sort of thing that you can see being ready for the next hard fork, or?
Maybe, but I'd say unlikely. So there is a lot of ramification in the UTXO commitment stuff. Many of them in terms of performances, and so it needs to be done very carefully. So right now there is a prototype. Actually, Thomas have used the prototype to produce some UTXO commitment on the testnet. So there is some code that has been written that is out there, but we need to make sure that everything is super right. Because of the size of the change and complexity of it, November seems a bit short. I mean, maybe if everything goes well, but I would expect maybe more like next year.
Yeah, also the other thing is simply adding UTXO commitments to the blocks is not sufficient. There needs to be a network layer protocol to actually download the UTXO set from another node and then check it, and that portion is not done yet. So it's UTXO commitments itself might be done in November, but the actual ability to use it wouldn't be done yet.
Okay, so it's sort of a longer term thing. So you two have been both very busy gentlemen. Sort of Bitcoin ABC, you've recently just sort of published a paper all about promoting a new transaction ordering process. Perhaps you could sort of explain for our viewers just a little bit more about that and sort of the story behind that.
Okay, so this is an idea that I've been floating in the space for a long time. This is not quite new, but we are reaching a point where we can actually execute on it. So right now, there is no specific ordering of the transaction in the block. There are some rules about what you cannot do, but if you respect those few rules, then you can do pretty much whatever you want. And it causes various problems. One of them is that you need to check those few rules about what you cannot do. And checking those rules is a process that is difficult to do in parallel, right? So when you want stuff to get bigger and bigger and bigger, you want to be able to parallelize the workload, right? So you can add more CPUs and you can do more of it, or even like if things get very big, you can add several servers and each server do, a chunk of the work. If you can separate stuff like that and do chunk of the work in parallel, then it's very easy to scale. But if you have some process that is serial, that each step of the process depends on the previous step, then you end up in a situation where you cannot add more machine and makes the process faster, right? So this is one of the main reasons. It's that we have this serial process in there. So we want to limit that to scale better. And there is another big reason. It's if we specify the order of transaction in a way that every node, if they have the list of the transactions that are in the block, they can agree on the same order. Then what happens is that when you transmit the block from one node to the other, you don't need to transmit that order anymore. You just need to transmit data structure that explain here are the transactions that are in the block and the transactions that are not in the block. And then when you have like the set of transactions, you can reconstitute them in the same order. And as it turned out, transmitting the order is actually a lot of data, like way more than you would expect. Way more than you would expect intuitively. Because when you have no order, then so it's a bit technical, but there is a set of techniques that goes under the umbrella term set reconciliation that you can use to essentially agree on a set of elements without agreeing on the order. That is much more efficient and that we can leverage to propagate block faster.
And how's this paper sort of been received by the industry? Has it been sort of received so well? How's the sort of feedback gone so far?
So I guess if we go with what I said, are two papers we're referring to. One is going to be graphene. which is a network protocol layer that transmits blocks that take advantages of canonical ordering, what we call canonical ordering. So of the fact that if you know the set of elements that are in the block, you can agree on the order. And that allows almost an order of magnitude reduction in the amount of data you need to transmit the block. So that's pretty significant win. That has been not done by us, but by another group of people. I think Brian Levin and Gavin Andrews and a few other people. The paper that we've written out is more oriented on the performance and parallelization aspect of it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been received. I think for the most part positively.
Yeah.
There are a few people that are not happy about it, but I think like when this idea was introduced, there were more people. No, most of them, they kind of agree that it's a good idea. You still have a few reductible, but I guess it's always going to happen.
Nice. So it sounds like you've got an awful lot on your plate, sort of Bitcoin ABC at the minute. There's a lot of stuff you're working on. I mean, are there any more sort of protocol changes that you've been working on that you could perhaps share with us today? Is there anything else of interest?
There's, I think, one new opcode that people want to add in November that allows you to embed and verify data from trusted oracles. That would allow a lot of other use cases on Bitcoin Cash. That's kind of being pushed by Bitcoin Unlimited, specifically Andrew Stone, and then some other people as well.
So what are the sort of use cases that would allow? What's the benefit that would give?
So the root of the problem is that any information that originates from the blockchain is very easy to use in the blockchain, right? But any information that comes from the real world is not accessible to the blockchain, right? So say I want to do a contract based on who is going to be the next president of France after Emmanuel Macron, right? I do not know who that person is at the time, but when we get to the next election and that person is going to be elected, there is no way for something that is in the blockchain to know about the selection process that is outside of the world of the blockchain. And so there is this idea called Oracle. And an oracle is going to be someone we trust, or maybe it can be a group of people we trust that is going to certify that, yes, this person won the election, and that's going to sign a special message, that you can use in the blockchain that says who won the election, right? And then you can make smart contracts and stuff like that in the blockchain based on that outside world information. So I take the election, obviously, but anything that is any information that you would want to import in the blockchain, you can use some trusted party to do that for you, and then everything else can run in the blockchain.
It's interesting you kind of mentioned election, because that's something that blockchains could be used for in the future. That's right, isn't it? So is an election a good use of a blockchain?
It certainly makes voting auditable. I think that would be a potential use case, but I haven't seen a whole lot of different ways that could be done. I think some of the various ways that voting can be done on the blockchain I've read. I haven't actually seen the technical background to back up the methods that would be used there. Some people were recommending threshold signatures and some other things like that, but I haven't actually seen how you can do threshold signatures on Bitcoin without adding some different technology that's not currently there.
Yeah, so, well, there are ways. So it depends on the trade-off you want to make. And there is a set of trade-off that is very difficult to reproduce with any computer techniques that we have, with paper voting, is that it's very easy to ensure that everybody votes, but everybody will vote once, right? We can check the people who vote, but at the same time, we can audit the whole ballot, right? We can open the box and see all the paper, and it depends on the country, but at least in France, anybody can go see that this is done properly. You can, go watch the people doing it, and but at the same time, you have no idea who voted for who, right? Because all those envelopes, they are mixed up. And it turns out that creating an electronic process that have all those properties is actually fairly difficult. certainly using a blockchain helps with the fact that everybody is going to vote once, because in computer time it's also the Byzantine general problem, right? So you wanna make sure that someone is like I'd say the electronic version of it, but someone show up to one of the vote bureau and vote for something, but show up at the other one and vote for something else, without the two vote bureau being able to agree that this person voted twice, right? So it seems rather silly in real life, because obviously you cannot teleport yourself from one place to another. It's a fairly easy problem to solve in the real world, but it's actually a very difficult problem to solve on computer networks, because I can reach one computer, but I can reach a second computer somewhere else on the internet, pretty much at the same time, and submit two different votes. So the blockchain is very good at reconciliating this kind of stuff and preventing me from voting twice. It's also very good at making sure that the results are not tampered with. But the whole set of, like, how do you make sure that you can audit the election while keeping everybody who vote anonymous is more of a difficult problem.
Okay, so let's sort of move back to sort of the Bitcoin side of things. Interesting to talk about elections and stuff like that. Probably have to be a little bit careful what we say here, because my boss, Johannes Vermeerau, sort of said it, is he was talking about subdividing the Satoshi even further. Is this something that you guys agree with? What do you think to that?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary. If Bitcoin Cash were to say reach 5% adoption of all consumers in the world for all transactions, the price would go up quite a bit from where it is right now. And in that case, the fee structure on Bitcoin Cash would be kind of problematic, because there wouldn't be enough granularity to determine the fees anymore. So discussing it now before that actually becomes a problem is really critical.
Yeah, I would add on that. Yeah, it's not quite a problem now, but if we grow significantly, it's going to be. But doing this kind of change, essentially the cost of doing this kind of change directly depends on the size of the ecosystem, right? Because you need to get more people on board, synchronize the change with more people. So it's like, as the ecosystem grows bigger, it's more difficult. So I think actually it's better to do this kind of change now, because by the time this change is necessary, it's going to be like 10 times more difficult to do it than it is now.
So we talk about this sort of time frame. Now's the right time to do it. How much time have we got? What sort of time frame are we looking at here?
I don't know, hopefully as least as possible, because we're going to have as much growth as possible, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult to know.
The growth of Bitcoin Cash. What are the sort of obstacles that you need to come? What's sort of holding back that sort of growth at the moment?
I think a better user experience is absolutely necessary, but there's tons of groups outside of Bitcoin ABC that are working on excellent wallets right now, excellent hardware wallets. I also think a lot of machine-to-machine payments, as more like video games and whatnot come online, that would be excellent for the growth. A lot of different like mobile games and whatnot have in-game payments, and if those, I think Bitcoin Cash is an excellent platform for those to start using, and if that were the case, that would really increase adoption.
And we sort of spoke earlier, when we were talking about elections, we sort of talked about that opacity of seeing who's voting for what. And it's sort of the same for Bitcoin Cash, right? Is there anything that can be done to reduce the sort of opacity of transactions and how much you can see what other users are doing?
So there is a direct trade-off. You have some other cryptocurrency that are much more opaque on that front that Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash is. Things like Monero, or more recently there is this idea of Mimblewimble.
Mimblewimble.
Yeah, Mimblewimble. Yeah.
Very made-up word, that one.
Well, because it's in Harry Potter, this is one of the magic stuff that they do to prevent people from speaking.
Okay,
And
right,
so
sorry,
this is a cryptographic technique that
Brilliant.
essentially prevent anyone from looking at the blockchain and making any sense out of it. So essentially, it like prevent the blockchain from speaking.
Yeah.
Metaphorically. And so those technology, they are great. They provide higher degree of privacy, but they come with trade-offs. So in the case of Monero, for instance, it's significantly more difficult to scale Monero than to scale a technology like Bitcoin. For a technology like Wimble, it makes some weaker or stronger, like depends on how you want to look at it, but essentially it has a cryptographic assumption that's going to break before Bitcoin, if they break, right? Like we don't know if they're going to break or not, but if they break, everything is toast, essentially. And so there is a degree of risk associated to that, and there is a degree of benefit, so that's a different trade-off. In terms of what we can do on Bitcoin Cash, I think we should not go in the direction of what Monero or Wimble is doing, because that really changed the scalability and security assumptions that are made in the system. However, what can be done is better. So we already have a technology like CoinJoin that allow several people to cooperate together to create a transaction. And so you don't know whose money is going where. And better integration of this kind of technology in wallets and stuff would go a long way toward making the system more anonymous, because all the coins would be mixed up, so you're not quite sure what belongs to who.
Okay, nice. So let's sort of talk about another sort of problem in the industry. There's a lot of talk about fake news at the minute, and a lot of people talking about that sort of pump and dump. So there's sort of a lot of fake sort of media being put out there. Can you sort of see this propaganda issue in the industry? Can you sort of see it ending anytime soon, or is this a problem that we're going to sort of see continuing ever more?
So there's a lot of short-term incentives for people to do this, but I think it'll start to go away as adoption of cryptocurrencies increases. It'll be a lot harder to do like pump and dump schemes when the market caps are much higher. But for the short term, I think that it's going to continue to be a big problem. I don't know.
Yeah, so I agree. There is short-term incentive to do that, but I would also say there is long-term disincentive to do it. This is the kind of stuff that you can do a few times, but each time you do it, you lose credibility, right? So I think the actors that are doing it, they're gonna disappear, but new ones are gonna come. But then you have the effect that Shammah is talking about, where as the system grows bigger, it becomes more and more difficult to do this kind of stuff. So it's probably gonna go away naturally as the ecosystem grows.
And how about in sort of the forums? I've heard sort of in the news there's people deleting posts. Same with censorship. Is that also going to be a problem that we're still talking about in years to come? Why are they
yes,
doing
but
it?
I would assume that so what's been happening is that this censorship and stuff like that has been happening over maybe the past 2 years or so. It's been fairly serious. But at the same time, over the past 2 years, the cryptocurrency market has gone up and up and up and up, right? So whatever, like no matter what were your opinion, if you agree, you disagree or whatever, like nobody has been punished by the market yet, right? When the market goes like 20x over a year, everybody is a brilliant trader. Everybody knows, everybody knows everything and everybody is right? But obviously, there are some people that understand information better, and when the market is a bit more rough than it was over the past 2 years, then it's gonna make a difference. And the people that are not well informed, many of them are probably gonna lose their shirt. So, in that sense, it's probably a self-fulfilling, self-fixing process. But you need to give the time for the market to do its work.
So the feeling I get is that a lot of the bad press that Bitcoins are getting is down to a small minority of people. Is there, in the short term, is there anything that can be done to this small minority? Is there any way we can identify them?
Well, there are very much identified, I'd say. Like people that follow that closely know who those people are. And as I was saying, like right now there have been no weeding out of anybody. Like anybody could have come over the past 2-3 years in this market and see a huge boom. So nobody has been there was no bad decision. Like no matter what decision, except maybe BitConnect, but like every single other decision was a good one. Pretty much whatever you did. So right now everybody is a genius, right? But obviously, how surprising that would be that everybody's actually a genius.
I like the sound of that. Everyone's a genius. So recently in the news, Roger Ver said that Bitcoin's recent failures were down to humans rather than being technical. Is that something that you agree with, Shammah? Is that
Yeah,
what do you think to that?
I think that's absolutely true. I think the main failure in Bitcoin was that the developers of Bitcoin Core were incentivized to do things that were not in the interest of the Bitcoin ecosystem itself, due to where they took investments from. It's not necessarily like some evil plan. It's just a side effect of who they have to report to and who they have to generate a profit for. So by not being funded by miners, they don't have an incentive to do what's in the best interest of the people supporting the currency.
Got anything that you'd like to add to that at all?
No, pretty much. What we see is that some people took the whole development of Bitcoin seriously, and those people they had different plan than most people in Bitcoin had, and because everybody else was, not taking it as seriously, I guess, then those people ended up having a disproportionate importance. And that also the market at work, right? Like there are people that put their money where their mouth is more than others, and that ended up creating the situation. So in that sense, I agree. This is a human misjudgment, and so on that front, we are careful with Bitcoin ABC where we take funding from, and we are very careful also to have a structure that allows only for donation, which literally we couldn't give you like a mug or a T-shirt or whatever against a donation, because that would change our whole structure. Our structure is based, it's such as we cannot like give you something for your money. You cannot contract us to do anything, not even give you a mug. But then it's gonna be up to the people to decide if that is important or not. And if people behave like they did behave over the past 5 years with development, then we're gonna see the same type of result reproducing. So, but I hope that a lot of people understood what happened. It seems that people like Roger Ver understood that what happened. So
nice. So you
hopefully it's not
mentioned
gonna happen again.
Bitcoin ABC there. To sort of round things off, I'd like to sort of hear from both of you. How do you see the future for Bitcoin ABC, both in sort of the short, immediate term, and also in the long term? Shammah, if we start with you.
I'd like to see, as people provide donations for Bitcoin ABC, I would like to see more professional engineers come on board and provide a lot of testing and quality assurance on the product, so that, because we're actually targeting 100% uptime for the Bitcoin Cash network. It's really unacceptable if like all payments in the world went down, right? And we're targeting all payments in the world. So having all the adequate checks and balances in place to make sure that we're putting a quality product out is really important, and that takes a lot of time and resources. So that's my concern for the future of Bitcoin ABC. Amaury is more engaged in scaling and making sure that there's capacity for all those transactions that we want to see happening.
Yeah, pretty much. But those two challenges, they are fairly difficult, engineering-wise. They are, they've been solved, right? Like you don't see Google going down that often, for instance, and they are obviously very big. Obviously, they are, and you would say they are centralized in the sense that there is like Eric Schmidt or whoever is the CEO at the time make decision for Google, but they are their actual hardware infrastructure is actually extremely distributed. So if you have any single machine that fails, everything works. So those kind of problem on the engineering aspect of it, there are solutions, but we need also to get the engineers that have experience with this kind of system. And that means we're gonna need to attract engineers that worked at Google or Facebook or Amazon or this kind of company that have experience running this kind of system. So it's a bit of a challenge because you know, those are attractive place to work for as an engineer. So we need to have some convincing to do.
So how can we help Bitcoin ABC in a final word?
I think Amaury might be the best one to answer that question, although you guys are looking at me.
Okay. There are various ways. Like it depends. Well, it depends who you are, or like a person or a company, and what are your skill set, or you know what the means that you have. If you like, you know, someone that is a developer can obviously help developing some stuff. If this is a company looking toward building something in the ecosystem, then they need that, you know, the kind of like the infrastructure part of the ecosystem works well. Like, you know, imagine you have a shop or you have a factory or something. You want the road, you know, like between your factory and whoever you're selling to, you know, are good, so you can send trucks on them, right? You know what I mean? And in the case of roads, usually it's taken care of by the government, but in the case of Bitcoin, we need to build the infrastructure ourselves. So people that have businesses that rely on an infrastructure working well, I think it's make good business sense for them to invest in the infrastructure. And then for other people, like there is a ton of work that is not especially that technical that needs to be done. There is stuff like if people have some design skill, maybe helping with the website would be a good idea. Or if people have some, you know, writing skill, maybe academics, they can help, you know, do review of the different idea and write papers about them. I mean, like even if you know a language, like if you know English and some other language, you can help translate some stuff. I mean, there is a ton of way that someone can help. That being said, to make sure that it's actually not more of the burden on the project than, you know, like it needs to add more value. That we need people that can be like, you know, can be sufficiently self-driven, right? So if you say you are a person that is from Turkey, so you speak Turkish, obviously, and you also speak English and you're interested in Bitcoin, so you're going to say, okay, I'm going to do translation in Turk, for instance. We need to be able to trust you that it's going to happen, and we don't need to go against you again and again.
Yeah, like being consistent and reliable on the thing that you choose to do is huge.
Is key.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be like huge stuff.
Yeah.
Really, the more important stuff, because if this is not consistent, it doesn't need to be big, but it needs to be consistent. Because if it's not consistent, then it's going to have a lot of overhead in terms of managing what happened in that area. Mm-hmm. And right now, we are not that big that we can handle this kind of overhead.
Okay, well, thanks for a really interesting discussion and for taking the time out to talk to us today. It's been really, really interesting. So thanks for tuning in today. If you've got any questions or any comments, we'd love to hear from you. If you could leave a comment in the box below. So that's all for today, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.